It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. On that Odyssey app, by the way, we just unlocked a new feature for you that can get you more involved in the show. There next to the station, there's a little microphone, and you can actually leave us a voice message that we can use, and we could use it to never read the comments. We could use it in real things. We could use it just as a way to answer your question and spark some conversation here on the show. So as you listen in the free Odyssey app, go ahead and check out that brand new feature and make Anthony listen to 1 million voicemails. That's his punishment for not being in the stream on time, because I can't see Anthony right now, and that's not okay. Anthony, for all I know, you're wearing a ridiculous costume with a hat and Groucho Marx glasses.
You know me so well, Craig.
Yeah, I do. But that's okay. We'll get you all straightened out, get you where you need to be. I want to start. Speaking of ways that listeners can chime in, we did a Take Command mailbag, and we got a couple of questions that I didn't get a chance to get to in the mailbag, and one that I specifically pulled out and said, "We're not doing that. We're not doing that on Take Command. I want to do that on the Hoffman Show because I think this is a perfect question for Vibe Check Tuesday." So you can chime in starting now at 301-230-0980. Why leave a message? You can just call the show live because sometimes you can't call the show live. That's fine. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. And the question is from Brett. And Brett emailed, and he goes, preseason, I would have been happy with 8 wins. Now I feel like anything less than 10 wins and playoff appearance is a letdown. In your opinions, how does the team need to finish for it to be a success? I think this is a really interesting question because I do think that there is some room for differing opinions here. And I actually, even myself, have on some level differing opinions, if you will, because I think no matter how you slice it, based off of the longest of views, this is already a success. Like, you just have to acknowledge that this team has done far better and already, like, think about where we were in April, right? It was like, hey, if they get the draft pick right at 2 and they get the right quarterback, then everything else is gravy. It doesn't matter if they don't win a game in 2024. Like, as long as it's clear they have their guy for the future. And, at that point, we were also like, hey, they could, that guy might not play if he's not ready yet. And then maybe he comes in October, late October, early November, struggles a little bit, but then gets it going. And by the end of 2024, if he is in a good place, and we're just confident that the franchise is headed the right direction with a franchise quarterback for the future, then we can roll with that. We're so far beyond that. For the first half of the season, Jaden Daniels was legitimately an MVP candidate in the NFL. And I don't think he's got enough runway left to catch Saquon and to catch Josh Allen. So I don't think he's going to get back in that. But he very convincingly, I think, could be a top 10 finisher in MVP voting this year. I haven't done the math on that, but if I just think quickly about, well, there's 14 playoff teams, and he's going to be the starting quarterback on one of them and one of the main drivers of success on that team, then by nature, he's probably up there. Saquon, obviously, Josh Allen, Lamar, and what he's doing in Baltimore. Russ, probably has a say, although they were 4-2 before he took over, but he's taken their offense to a different level. Like, there's a bunch of guys that are on the back half of that top 10 that don't really belong in the true MVP conversation. And Jaden being amongst that list as a rookie is a hell of an accomplishment. And so I think that no matter what, you have to see this season as a success in the long term. But at this point, if they don't make the playoffs, that would be tremendously disappointing. Because if you are thinking about trajectory, hey, hot start. If they don't make the playoffs, it means they had a cold finish. Unless like one of these teams rips off, like if the Rams go 4-0 down the stretch and the Seahawks go 3-1, and the only Seahawks loss is to the Rams in that final game of the regular season. So pick one of those two, and the Commanders go 2-2. And the Seahawks, wind up stealing that last wild card spot, and the Commanders went 2-2 down the stretch. And yeah, it's probably still be disappointing, but at least, hey, it's a 10-win season, and live with that, and is what it is. But if they were to go 1-3 down the stretch, or God forbid 0-4, like especially considering who's on the schedule, like that would be tremendously disappointing. And it does matter from here. I do think you are allowed to, and again, I try not to tell people what to do with their feelings. I just express my own, and I think I'm a rational person, so that's good. I think it's perfectly rational and perfectly fine to adjust your expectation as you go. The team has proven they're capable of X. We thought they were only capable of like Q. So why shouldn't we hold them to X? They're going to hold themselves to X. I think that's the other thing. If they miss the playoffs or they, stumble down the stretch, they're going to be tremendously disappointed. And then the question becomes, how do they channel that? Do they funnel it into an offseason full of rage spent on getting better, or are there cracks in the foundation? Is there a lack of belief? And I just don't think that's the case. I think they've proven who they are, what they're made of, and that should be good enough for them to make the playoffs. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. We'll take calls on how you feel about that next on a Vibe Check Tuesday. 301-230-0980. Quickly before we hit the break, Anthony, do you have any initial thoughts on the back end here of the idea of this season and success through either a short or long-term lens?
I mean, I'm more so happy where we are. I think I'm more so just at a point where, yes, we're 8-5. Yes, we have a chance at the playoffs, and I want a little bit more, but I'm just not going to get my hopes too high to the point where I'm like so upset and call for left and right to be fired or anything. It's more so just I'm okay with the process, and the process just has us above, where we all anticipated us being at the end of the season. Like nobody envisioned us being 8-5, 14 weeks through the season. So again, I'm happy with where we are. I do want a little bit more. I'm still chomping at the bit. But at the same token, I understand this isn't a championship roster. We probably will play some of those teams that have championship rosters to a good game, and we, can be left saying, what if we did this and had we done this? But at the same token,
what if we had a championship roster? Like what happens when Adam Peters sinks his teeth into free agency and another draft?
Yeah, we got some time then. We got some time. But I'm more so just talking about this year, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, here's the thing. No matter what, you're going to be bummed at the end of the year. The nature of losing your last game, unless this team pulls off the miracle and threads the needle all the way to a Super Bowl, if this team winds up as the 7th seed and faces the Eagles and loses to them in the playoffs, even though we all acknowledge the Eagles are a better roster, that's going to hurt. That's going to sting. Then you take a week and you go, or a couple of days, and you go, hey, they're the better team. They've been building for a long time. They've paid a bunch of vets a bunch of money, and we're coming for their next year. But have your expectations change. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. We're taking your calls next on a Vibe Check Tuesday on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show on Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 4:30, Mitch Tischler on a Tischler Tuesday. We're going to shift Mitch to 4:30 because our guy Bobby Belt from the For the Love of the Star podcast is going to join us at 5. That is the take command, if you will, for the Dallas Cowboys. And, well, they had a bad night. They had a really, really bad night, and I want to talk about it. So we're going to have Bobby Belt coming up at 5 o'clock for Not My Beat. Right now, though, taking your calls, plenty of phone lines open, 301-230-0980. Have your expectations changed for the Commanders in 2024? And I guess, Anthony, the more I think about it, the more I sat in the break and kind of really pondered here, I'd be pretty disappointed if they did not finish at least 2-2. And 2-2 is kind of giving them one. And this is purely based off schedule, right? Let's run through it. Dan Quinn hates this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Sorry, Dan. We have a radio show to fill. First game, New Orleans Saints. They're terrible. And they're starting Jake Haener. Often you're terrible. All due respect to Jake Haener. I'm so sorry that Jake Haener, he's a fine college player. He's better at playing quarterback than I could ever dream of being. I'm not saying that I could be Jake Haener. Just Jake Haener's borderline an NFL quarterback. So on a lot of situations, you'd be bad because you're starting Jake Haener. The Saints were bad and they're starting Jake Haener. You got to win this game. Doesn't matter if it's a road game. Doesn't matter New Orleans is a tough place to play. Doesn't matter any of that stuff. You're coming off a bye. You're facing the Saints. They're starting Jake Haener. You must win that football game. Eagles game, that's tough. Would love to see them win it. If they do, sick. Then just please don't trip over yourself on the way across the finish line. But that one's tough. The Falcons game is potentially tough, but they're playing pretty crappy football right now. Offensively, they're a mess. I don't know if the formula works quite as well against Atlanta, but it also kind of does. Like the Commanders' formula of like, let's get up on a team early and then they can't pass back. Like Kirk can still sling it. It seems like if you give him enough opportunities, he's going to throw it to you eventually. And so it's not like when you play some of these teams that are incompetent. Frankly, the formula, if you will, we should trademark that. The formula. Put that on a t-shirt. That works better against Philly. Like Jalen Hurts has to drop back and read out a defense. That's not his game. He threw for 108 yards last week. Kirk, he's thrown for like 500 this year at times. He's also thrown for 4 picks in a game. So that's a bit of a wild card. And then Dallas, like last night was the end of the road for Dallas. Micah's walking off the field upset. And I'm not mad at Micah. That's not criticizing him. Like that dude is just like fed up. He's like, what more do I have to do? That injury, feel absolutely terrible for DeMarion Overshown. Really, really brilliant young player who just absolutely shredded his knee, unfortunately. He's got ACL, MCL, PCL is the reporting. So all of the ligaments pretty much in your knee. He's going to have to get that reconstructed, and hopefully he can come back and be an impact player. But that's really, really tough. So they're without one of their best on defense. And, like, if I'm CeeDee Lamb, I'm probably being like, yo, I'm good to get to the offseason healthy. Cooper Rush is already playing quarterback. Like, I know they lost to him already. But you better go down there and beat the pants off the Dallas Cowboys in Week 18. Send Mike McCarthy out with the loss that he deserves. And if you think of it through that lens, they don't win at least those 2 games. I know it's the NFL. I know everything, anything can happen. I'm Mr. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. You better win those 2 games. And if not, then you obviously don't deserve to make the playoffs. But really, you should win those 2 plus the Atlanta game. And so if you finish anything less than 2-2 and you don't make the playoffs, like at that point, you haven't played up to your standard. And I think that is disappointing. And I actually don't really have a problem saying that out loud, even while acknowledging, like, you know what? In the long term, it's probably fine. Maybe it's the fire that lights beneath them for the future, but you really, really should get those final 2, or 2 of the final 2, if not 3 of the final 4. Or say 2 of the final 4, if not 3 of the final 4.
Yeah, and I think also to your point, I feel as though with the bye week, the time off, I feel like some of the problems that we had during that rough stretch where we lost 3 straight, I think we should have been able to, address or, fix some of those problems. Especially, being able to like get healthy. I know that was a huge thing. And then also just getting back to like, or I guess reassessing what our identity is as we, move towards this final stretch of the season. If we can do some of the things that we were able to do early in the season and get back to that, being at full health, I definitely think we should be able to go out there and beat a Jake Hayner?
Hayner. Yeah.
Hayner. Yeah.
You don't have a big Jake Hayner final?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you, Anthony? Are you a professional or not?
Jake Hayner led Saints team. And then we'll see if we can finally, beat a good team in the Eagles. And then hopefully we close the year strong with a win over the Falcons and the Cowboys. But I definitely think we need to figure out what our identity is, get back to it in these next couple of games.
Apparently Spencer Rattler might be available for this game. He's been hurt. But I did a quick Google of Jake Hayner because I was going to do a surprise pop quiz Jake Hayner trivia. First of all, Derek Carr hasn't technically been ruled out.
Nope.
Also, the first line of this article on Saints Wire from USA Today is Derek Carr's season may be over. So really a big maybe not. That's not really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. That's like 6 of one, 38 of the other.
Yeah, I was listening to the Saints head coach, and he was talking about he has a concussion he has to get through, but he's also week to week with a hand injury, and he tried to compare it to, I think, Josh Allen. He was the one that played with like one hand or like a fractured thumb, or it might have been Herbert, one of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look good. I don't think they should rush him out there just because the dude is beat up, and their season sort of kind of looks like it's going nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know why you would do that. I mean, Carr, he's a football player. He's going to want to play. But, yeah. The thing is, like, if I were them, I would start Rattler. Like, if that's an option.
He's the one that started the other game.
Yeah, he's not good.
Yeah.
But, like, he's a rookie with some serious upside. Like, there's a lot of people that really like Spencer Rattler as a talent. And he was terrible. He took a ton of sacks. Like, if he start either way, like Joe Witt Jr. should have a feast this week with pressure packages, and now you have what's it called? Marshawn Lattimore on the outside, like so you can dial up some more man stuff, and like you can play the way you want to play because it's not like the Saints don't have any receivers either. Like Olave's out, like Dante Pettis, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is one of their top guys. Like, they're really not talented. Like, unbelievably not talented on that side of the ball. So, I would probably just play, unless you're like, hey, we just want to, as an organization, if you're the general manager, do you go down and be like, hey, look, interim head coach, you're going to play Jake Hayner because we don't want Spencer Rattler to have to play under these circumstances, and we'll have a new head coach, or when the new offensive coordinator is here, we'll have him evaluate our guys. But it's you have to win this game.
Yeah.
Like, again, and you have to. I'm not saying if you lose, you get fired or whatever like that. Like, I always kind of think the must win, whatever, is kind of silly because look, they win this game, then win the Philadelphia game. Well, they went the same 1-1 everyone expected. But this is, I think the right way to phrase it is this is an extraordinarily winnable game. One of the, like, if either one of these guys starts, legitimately one of the easiest NFL games that you could ask for. Because offensively, they are sideways. And if you can get up on them early, which their defense has got a little bit of bite to it, but not a lot. If you can get what you need to offensively early, and Alvin Kamara is not running, they're just going to hand the ball to Alvin Kamara 40 times. I still might hand the ball to Alvin Kamara 40 times. But then they have no chance of coming back on you. You have a first quarter like you had against Tennessee or Arizona or Carolina, like that game's over before halftime. Like they shouldn't even play the second half. Mm-hmm. They have that little of hope. But we'll see. We'll see. You say these things and then you realize like oh, wow, my skis, they're back there. I may have gotten a little bit over them because they did win last week. Now, Carr played most of the game, and they were playing the Giants, who are terrible. But it is going to be an uphill battle for the Saints, and so hopefully the Commanders can appropriately play the role of the hill, if you will, on Sunday. All right, we'll get back to Vibe Check Tuesday next week here on the show because, well, we'll have a game to talk about, and we'll be heading into that rematch with Philly. We also might have to take some calls later in the hour at 301-230-0980. Yeah, we'll talk about the Cowboys' misery with Bobby Belt at 5 o'clock. We'll take command mailbag for you, I think, coming up at 5:30. Our NFL tiers, very much looking forward to that at 6. But next, it is a Tischler Tuesday. Mitch will join us. Anthony, did you feel like a real DJ there? Because you got to play the air horns right into some music.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I like that. Good job. Nice work out of you. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. The air horns means Mitch Tischler is joining us, typically 5 o'clock on Tuesdays. But with the bye week, we're shaking things up, mixing things around. And thus, Tischler Tuesday has arrived early. Mitchell, how are you? How was your bye weekend?
Bye week was fantastic. Nice and relaxed, ready to get back to it here for a nice little playoff run.
Yes, indeed. I want to talk to you about expectations here in a second, but I know you and JP had Dan Quinn on the pod during the bye week. What was your biggest takeaway from that conversation on the Beltway Football Podcast?
Honestly, that dude is a football guy through and through. Lots of people are in love with football, but find an outlet outside of their time in the facility to do some other things, whether it's golf, bowl, read, play Pokemon, whatever it is. And Dan Quinn is just through and through into football. Asked if he was going to try and get away a little over the bye week to take a breath from everything he was doing. And he's all in on the game and all in on this team. And quite frankly, if he was a player, I might be concerned about some burnout or, tired mind, tired legs, all those different things. But this is a guy that's been there, done that. He's been through the rigors of an NFL season, and the fact that he's still going this hard during the time off for the team tells me that this is a guy who has high expectations and is really looking for this team to do something.
So Mitchell, I am going to need DQ to take some time off to read at some point because this is not a bit. I gave him a book. There was a book that I was reading that I thought he would really enjoy on like mindset and a lot of the stuff that he talks about in the book. I think attacks a lot of that stuff from a similar aspect to how he thinks about it. And as I was starting to cover the team or cover Quinn this summer during training camp, and he's kind of laying out his vision, I was like, this is a lot of this stuff is in this book. I'm gonna see if DQ's read it. And he said no, but it's been on my list. So I gave it to him after a game a couple weeks ago. So Mitch, I need him to take a break so he can read this book. I guess after the season's fine, but like I eventually want my book back.
I got to be honest. If it's semi-related to football in some capacity, there's a chance he's into it.
Okay.
So very well, his off time might have been, reading about leadership and all the different things that book read about. So you never know.
There you go. The book I think is called Toughness. It's by Steve Magnus. If anybody wants to read it. Eventually, I did make Dan agree to do like a book club podcast with me. So eventually, he's going to be on our show, or he lied to me, in which case we'll deal with that later. All right, Mitch. The question that we were asking folks before you got on is: have your expectations changed for the Commanders? They started 7-2, obviously. Now sitting at 8-5, coming out of the bye, in the 7th seed with a 1-game lead over LA and obviously a couple game lead over some other teams that will compete for that final playoff spot. So knowing what we thought coming into the season and trying to kind of balance the long and the short term of it all, would you say it's disappointing if the Commanders do not ultimately make the playoffs as we sit here right now?
Absolutely. It'll be disappointing. From the beginning of the season, I think, expectations were, hoping for a bounce back, maybe double the win total from last year, maybe get to finishing above 500, but, and maybe make the playoffs, I guess we're probably at the high end of the expectations. But then as you start getting into the season, I think, expectations change from making the playoffs to can we win the division? Then the lull came and it was, can we make the playoffs? I think the bounce back against the Titans, kind of, again, alters where your expectations are for this team. But it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. And I think when you have a team coming off a season as bad as last year and all the changes and everything that happened, I think that if you would have told Commanders fans at the beginning of the season that they'd be in the catbird seat for a playoff position, I think everyone would have been excited about it. And quite frankly, I think that's where the team stands right now, is that they are in a great position to make the playoffs. And, they're sort of 2 games up on everybody. The Rams are, 7-6. The Commanders are 8-5, but they have a better record in the conference than the Rams do right now. So it's kind of a 1.5 game lead right there. At the end of the day, they control their own destiny, and that's all you can ask for as a club. Expectations wise, though, you have 4 games left here, and if you go 2-2 in that span, with the Eagles, Falcons, Cowboys, and obviously Saints coming up, I think you got to feel pretty good about your chances, because the Rams would ultimately have to finish 3-1 to catch you, and they have the Niners, Jets, Cardinals, and Seahawks. Obviously some of those are winnable games, but I think they're in a position where they shouldn't settle for anything less than being a playoff team.
I 100% agree, and I think they feel that way, which probably should tell us something. I know Dan yesterday got a little. I don't know what you were in the room, so you can tell me whether it was fake snippy or real snippy when Scott Abraham asked him about looking ahead in terms of hey, that's not how we do things around here. But if they were being honest, like they think they're in great position. And the other thing, Mitch, I think is the schedule. Just making sure that they stay focused and against a team, for instance, like the Saints this weekend, who is not very good and is going to likely be starting Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler at quarterback or a very, very banged up Derek Carr. So how much trust do you have in them to really handle their business in the way that they have for most of the time this year? But there was also the Cowboys game that maybe pokes a hole in that armor.
And that's the thing. Losing to the Cowboys is never a good thing. So any positive that I'm trying to point out, taking away from it, is minimized by the fact that the loss was to the Cowboys. But I do think it was a wake-up call for this team, and I do think that the air of invincibility and Jaden Daniels is going to be the best player on the football field. I think went away when they lost that game to the Cowboys because, quite frankly, they're a better football team than them, and it's something that shouldn't have happened. And I think for the coaching staff and the players both, it was a wake-up call. I thought they stiffed the smelling salts, and you realize that you can't take any team for granted. And I think the bounce back against the Titans was a really big bounce back and a really good reassurance for the guys that, hey, we are this team, we are good enough to go in and blow out anybody. And you got to do that against the Saints. The same thing that we talked about when they played the Cowboys. This is a team that's reeling, and their quarterback situation is a mess. Who knows who they're going to start? You mentioned the three guys that are on the roster. They also signed Ben DiNucci, who I think they're the Commanders then, maybe Washington Football, when he was with the Cowboys. Actually, let me phrase that. The Commanders beat them the year that they went to the playoffs and played all the bad quarterbacks down the stretch. That was 2020. I guess they were a Washington Football team then, but they're not going to have a premier starting quarterback, and Alvin Kamara is a good enough football player that he can wreck a defensive game plan and cause some problems. And we've seen the Commanders have some struggles, in the run game, particularly with guys getting room on the outside, which is something that, Kamara does a really good job of. So there's certainly nobody to overlook, but that's a team that you got to put away early, and you got to remind them that, hey, your season's over and we're still playing for something real. We need this win more than anything.
Yeah, Mitch Tischler with us, Beltway Football Podcast, of course, here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. As we've talked about a lot this year, the game flow, the formula, the script, whatever you want to call it, that ability to just get up on a team early and let them have it. If you can do that against the Saints, they turn one-dimensional. Like you should win that game in blowout fashion in the way that you won a lot of other games in blowout fashion in a league that doesn't really lend itself to blowouts that often. How experimental do you think that they'll get defensively in this game with Marshawn Lattimore? One, do we expect him to play a full complement of snaps? And two, is there a noticeable difference in the amount of man coverage that they play and the amount of pressure that they send with him out there for the first time?
I got to be honest, I don't think the defense is going to change a whole lot. I think that we've seen throughout the season, Joe Witt and Dan Quinn really try a bunch of different combinations and different players in different places to kind of see what fits. I think they're going to try and play to his strengths, which may lay a little bit more in man-to-man, but I don't think they're going to change the tenor of the defense just because Marshawn Lattimore is back. Certainly it's going to be a fun storyline, with him going back to New Orleans and, to a much, much, much lesser extent. I think folks will be interested in Chase Young, being here or playing against, the team that drafted him. But quite frankly, that's much further down the storyline list. Last week or 2 weeks ago when we talked to Joe Witt right before the bye week, he had mentioned that, he wasn't really going to talk too much about Marshawn Lattimore until he got a full complement of practice in, and that means, playing team, which he hadn't done to that point. Dan Quinn talked about him running full speed this week and expecting him to get involved. And so I think he'll get, pretty close to a full complement of plays. I mean, I don't think that they're going to put him in there if he's not ready to play yet. We've seen that, based on the last 3 or 4 weeks out of him. But as far as how the defense is played and what they call, I don't think I see that materially changing because, these guys have turned up the pressure defensively as the season has continued and really, gotten much more stout on that side of the ball. And I don't think they want to kind of change up the expectation and change up, what's been working from them in places. I think it's more Marshawn Lattimore's an additive, not a game changer per se for them.
And then what do you think they wind up doing at the other corner spot? We're all, I guess, guessing because Joe Witt has said, I'm not going to talk about it. And I don't think Dan, I think Joe will be like, we'll see on Sunday. He'll give a kind of more cold answer where Dan will smile and do his Dan Quinn thing and then eventually be like, yeah, why would I tell you that? I don't want to give the Saints an advantage. And it's like, well, you're correct. I'm not going to be mad at you for not answering that. But what's our best guess, Mitchell, on whether it's Mike Sainers still outside opposite of Lattimore, they bump him back inside, Juice, Michael Davis, the rotation that they've been doing. What do we think they do out there?
Yeah, I think Sainers still played well enough, particularly as of late, to deserve the chance to stay on the outside and continue improving at that position. I think you're going to see Lattimore on one side, Sainers still on the other, and a lot of Igbinoghene in the slot there. And then obviously I think that next group of players, the Benjamin St. Juste, Michael Davises, will rotate in and out because neither Lattimore or Sainers still are going to play every single defensive snap. And then obviously as they rotate through nickels and dimes and different formations, you might see them all on the field in different capacities at the same time. But when we talk about base, I think it's going to be Lattimore, Sainers still, Igbinoghene out there. And quite frankly, I think that's the best combination of three that they have. Because when you look at what the Saints offense does, a lot of multi-tight end sets, not a lot of, 3-4 wide where they really want to spread out a defense. They have all those different tight ends that they rotate in and out. Quite frankly, I think they're all about the same player, just have different names, heights, and weights, but none of them are particularly more scary than the next guy. So I just think it's a collection of bodies that they roll out there. And, I think this is going to be a big Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, linebacker, Jeremy Chin type game because those guys, they love to run those tight end routes in the middle of the field, and those guys are going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, that actually is a great summation of the Saints offense. It's just a bunch of bodies being rolled out there wearing Saints uniforms, which honestly
different names,
is
different heights, different face, all the same player.
Yeah, which is also like the first 30 years of Saints history and Archie Manning. So
exactly.
There's
Derek Carr is kind of your modern day Arch, right?
Not really. Arch was pretty darn good, and he was super mobile. That was the thing. Like he had to run around because he didn't have anybody blocking for him. But like he was also pretty good at it. Derek Carr's not like he's not unathletic, but he's not Archie Manning level athletic.
I guess I was thinking more in the compile a lot of stats and don't really actually ever win anything of any true value. Was the kind of direction I was going with it. But yes, you're correct.
Yeah, I think in the annals of NFL history, if you're doing an all-time quarterback draft, you're not going to get to either in the first 100 or maybe 200, but you probably get to Archie first. All right. Mitch Tischler, he's the Beltway Football Podcast. It's JP Finley. It's out multiple times per week. You can check it out wherever you get your podcast. They also do a live show on the Monumental Sports app post-game, so you can check that out Sunday from New Orleans after Saints and Commanders. Mitchell, thank you as always, sir, and we will talk to you next Tuesday.
Always happy to come on with you, Craig. Hope you guys had a good bye week and are ready for hopefully another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks of NFL football here with this Commanders team.
I will take as many as they will give me. Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you.
All right, that's Mitch Tischler. Again, Beltway Football Podcast, wherever you get your pods. Let's actually quickly, either one, if you want to talk about the expectations question, you can call in at 301-230-0980. Or we can tackle this defensive back question, because I actually think my answer's slightly different than Mitch's in terms of what is best for the Commanders with the return of Marshawn Lattimore, or I guess the entrance in terms of the Commanders for Marshawn Lattimore into the lineup. That's next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5 p.m., so about 10 minutes from now, Bobby Belt, who is the host of the For the Love of the Star podcast, the Cowboys podcast in our Odyssey family, he is going to join us to talk about the sadness that was the Dallas Cowboys loss last night to the Cincinnati Bengals. I should say sadness for them. I was perfectly fine with it. I don't know, by the way, also, Anthony, potential Real Things content. Did you see the Chris Collinsworth on the Manning cast?
I did not.
Collinsworth called Jamar Chase for a walk-off like earlier in the drive. He's like, wow. I think they'll go. Now, the route they ran shouldn't have been like a walk-off situation, if we're being honest. Like, you can't give up a touchdown on an out route. If you're going to give it up to someone, then Jamar Chase makes the most sense.
You know, he's done that multiple times.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Often out route.
He's the best.
Curl route.
Or a curl, yeah, I should say curl. He's the best after the catch guy in the league.
It's ridiculous.
It's not even, like, I don't say it's not even close, but, like, I don't know that it is. Like, CD is great.
Tyreek
is great. Like, but Jamar just runs away from, like, he just has such an understanding of angles where he's just like, if I hit this here, bang, gone.
Is he better than Christian McCaffrey after the catch as well?
I mean,
Deebo Samuel is also really good at it.
I mean, they're all great, but, like, Jamar runs, like, who's got more 70, let's look it up. Who leads the NFL
Jamar.
in yak?
It's probably Jamar.
NFL yards after catch leaders, 2024.
And he does this without screens. Like Deebo and Christian usually, like, they're following
He had a screen
blockers.
this year. He had a screen this year that he took 70 yards against the Ravens, I think it was. Yeah. League leader in yak by almost 100 yards is Jamar Chase. He's got
it?
Yeah. Okay. 620 yards of yak this season.
God dang. And he leads the league right now, right? In touchdowns, yards.
Oh, yeah.
And probably receptions, too.
He's
going
the
for
league.
the Triple Crown.
Let's see. Targets. He's actually third in targets. He's got 93 receptions, which is the highest in the league.
Yeah.
1,319 yards, which is the highest in the league.
Yep.
JJ's second with over 1,100. By the way, Terry is seventh with 896.
Yeah.
Yak, 620.
How many tuds?
He's got, where are we? Where's the touchdowns? Receiving TD. Jesus. He's got 15.
15.
Terry and Amon-Ra St. Brown at 9 or second. Good for Terry.
He's going for the Triple Crown, Craig, and he's going to get paid. Bring out the Brinks, man.
Yeah.
But also T. Higgins will be gone probably.
Yeah, which will hurt. But
yeah,
still.
That is insane. He putting that team on his back. Him and Joe.
Unfortunately,
Joe Shiesty.
Unfortunately, they're giving each other a piggyback ride to nowhere.
Yeah.
Because their defense has been horrendous, and they've lost a bunch of games that they absolutely shouldn't have won. But yeah, Jamar Chase is having a ridiculous season, and so he does this kind of thing. But like, if you know he does this kind of thing, perhaps have some more safeguards too. So we'll talk to Bobby Belt in a couple of minutes about that. As for the Commanders secondary, I kind of wonder if they go matchup dependent for the rest of the year, because there are certain types of receivers that Benjamin St. Juste is perfectly fine against, and other types of receivers that Mike Sanders still might be the better guy against. Or, hey, I want a little bit more in run support. I want a little more of this, a little more of that. And I don't know that it's going to be 100% Marshawn Lattimore opposite, for instance, Mike Sanders still. Because I also think there's maybe some guys that are going to play in the slot that you would just trust Sanders still with more. And you were like, hey, no, let's get BSJ outside, because Noah at times has been up and down. That's kind of the I don't want to say problem, but the problem for the Commanders, the conundrum that they're trying to solve is BSJ, Sandor Still, and Igbenogany have all been inconsistent all year. And so it's a little bit of playing whack-a-mole in terms of what your best combination is opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. You know that he is the number one guy, but I don't know that it's 100% going to be, like, it seems based off the depth chart right now, the fact that they're rotating Davis and BSJ on the other side and Sanders Still's been consistent, that it'll be Sanders Still. That's 100% what I expect to start and to be the most common pairing. But I don't know that Sanders Still is not going to play a little bit inside. I don't know that it's always going to be not BSJ or even a little bit of Michael Davis on the outside?
Yeah, definitely a unique situation. Quick question. What are your thoughts of Mikey playing off coverage?
I mean, that's a technique thing. Like you can play some of that. You can play some of
But I don't know.
some press. Like it just depends on what the call is.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. Are you playing man? Are you playing zone? Is it 3? Is it 2? Is it, what's going on behind you? What's the down and distance? Like, why do you ask?
I mean, just because on the plays that he's been beat. I know against the Titans, he got ran right by. Against the Bengals, even though that is Jamar Chase, he's guarding. Got ran by. Benjamin St. Juste, same thing. I don't know. I have my reservations about them playing off coverage just because, again, if they're in man coverage and he's off and there's a guy that just sprints full speed, that's where the explosive being given up happens. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, you just have to play better technique. I mean, that's the league.
I don't know if I like it because you get no hand on them. You can't really hit them after 5 yards. You're already playing 7 yards off. Like, I think you're just at a disadvantage.
But I think, like, if you miss at the line of scrimmage and you just get run by, like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
It makes you easier to block because you're right there. So some of his ability in the run game and where he's, like, shot the gap on screens, some of these TFLs he's made, like, he's playing off. It's just you have to be solid in your – I mean, the thing is, like, in theory, if I were to say, hey, don't let me run by you, would you get right up on me or would you try to give me a cushion? You want the cushion. Why wouldn't you take it?
And it's probably also he's betting on the blitz getting home kind of thing where the pass coverage mirrors the rush.
The thing is, like, if you're a Madden player. If you see corners playing off, what do? You try to throw the hitch, right?
Yeah.
You're like if you have something that is a deep shot called, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna hit this deep shot, and you see the corner over that guy playing off, you're like, ah, crap. Not necessarily mean you can't win, but it feels less likely, right?
Yeah.
So if you are a quarterback, or if you're a defensive coordinator, I should say, and you're trying to encourage bend but don't break, like let's encourage shorter, quicker stuff and trust that our guys will rally and tackle, off coverage is a good way to do that.
Yeah.
So I hear you. They need to play it better because the same route that BSJ got beat on by Mike Williams is what Mikey got beat on against Tennessee.
Yeah.
Little kind of like barely a post corner.
I wouldn't even call that. He sort of kind of just bent the route inside.
Yeah,
and went
just
out.
kind of a nice inside stem, and then just create space. Like you just got to play that technique better. You got to play the leverage better. But I'm definitely curious to see. Maybe DQ will give us a little bit more tomorrow. But chances are we're not going to find out until Sunday. When we get back, we'll get some more insight on just how bad things are in Dallas and where they go from here. Bobby Belt from For the Love of the Star joins us here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Let's tackle today's top story, which is that there's much joy in the DMV because there's much sadness in Dallas. And let's do it with an expert. Anthony, please hit the magical button.
Today's top story from the
I think he's echoing.
You are looking live.
This just in.
I hear you on him.
I beat.
All right, let's dive into it with Bobby Belt, who is the host of the Love of the Star podcast. Of course, we call it the Take Command of Dallas. Of course, they probably call their podcast the same thing in reverse down there. Bobby, what's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. Sounds like
Sounds
we got an echo. So we're gonna have to figure that out. Anthony, do you want to drop this out real quick, and maybe let's just call Bobby instead of dealing with the tech issue there. But of course, we're gonna talk with Bobby about the the Cowboys lost last night in Dallas, the Cowboys lost last night in Dallas to the Bengals, where they had just a bizarre ending to that game where on the 30, I believe it's directly on the 30-year anniversary of the Leon Lett play, they touch a blocked punt that allows the Bengals to then recover, and they take over for eventually the game-winning drive, and then they give up just the most predictable thing in the world, which is like, why? How do you let Jamar Chase loose? And so Bobby's going to just join us on the phone instead of our attempts at using fancy technology. So Bobby, very simply, like you're on top of hosting the pod, you produce the mornings down there with Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan. Like, how despondent were Cowboys fans this morning, or was the season kind of already over before this happened?
You know, I think it was probably for a lot of them over before this happened, but it's not just a feeling of like, you know, well, it was already over. There does seem to be a little bit of, you know, if this is going to be bad, let's be a disaster. Like you know, there reaches a point where when things get so negative around here that people at that point just want to kind of lean into that intensity. And so honestly, when things are like a close game with a bad team, or when they beat the Giants, it almost feels a little bit more of like a shoulder shrug than when something like this happens against the Bengals and they feel like, here's something we can seize on and we can really go after the front office and the coaching staff and things like that for it. Because they want confirmation right now of the change that they seek or the reasons for the change that they seek. So
there was definitely a thought of like Mike McCarthy's just kind of coming in this year as a sitting duck, and they're probably going to be bad, and there's not a lot they can do about it. There's only so much roster flexibility they have, something of their own doing. There's, Dan Quinn leaving, and how's that going to affect the defense? There's all these questions. Was this kind of like the way this season has played out, even though there has been some extra fun and some extra not fun, like some extra terrible, the Dak injury, and obviously what happened last night to Marion Overshown is just absolutely brutal. But on the much like more macro sense of it, was this just kind of how this season needed to play out? They hit the reset button and hope to hit the ground running next year, or was there a different path possible for this season?
I don't know. I mean, it all depended on, you got to go back to January when they lost to Green Bay in the playoffs, because that was a team that I think objectively everybody felt like heading into that game, Dallas was better than Green Bay. Dallas had been better all year long. Green Bay had kind of struggled for most of the season and then had a surge late with some great play from Jordan Love in the back half of the year to get into that spot. But there weren't a lot of people picking Green Bay heading into that game. So when they came into AT&T Stadium and just destroyed Dallas, and Dallas had all 53 guys looking completely underprepared, it left a lot of fans, I think, with questions of, okay, did they just expose something about this team that we're not as good as we thought we were? Or this exposed larger issues that they've been neglecting? Or is this just, it was a flat performance and it came at the worst possible time? And I think a lot of people felt like, no, it exposed something. The team didn't seem to agree with that. The front office had a different approach. Everybody seemed to kind of say, heads down, bad luck, we'll get him next year. But even still, they said goodbye to so much of their depth. It feels like half of their roster left for Washington this offseason. And you've got, a situation where when they're healthy at the start of the year, I think a lot of people still felt like, okay, that their offense and defense, they're top 22 starters, 11 on both sides of the ball. that top 22 is still one of the better rosters in football. The problem is that guy 23 through 53 might have been a bottom 5 roster. They just didn't have any depth, and they were so financially handcuffed that they weren't able to replenish any of that. They had given up their 4th-round pick for Trey Lance, which was an awful trade. So they lost a key depth piece for rebuilding there in the draft. And so they put a lot of pressure on the front office that said every single one of these guys has to hit right away, or put that on the scouting staff. And the problem is when Tyler Guyton doesn't hit right away, or, you've got a center that's playing center for the first time. He had previously been a guard like that, and that's not hitting right away. It causes other issues for them. So I think a lot of people felt like this was a possible path they could have gone down, but it is the worst possible path. Every single bad thing has come to fruition that they could have anticipated.
By the way, just quickly on the Trey Lance thing. Like the fact they traded a 4th-round pick for him and they're still starting Cooper Rush. I believe the correct phrasing of this question would be, what the hell?
Yeah, look, it's one of those quotes that, we always hear is like, Mark Twain said that, or Abraham Lincoln, and people don't actually know the origin. Like, we can't figure out what the origin is, but there's that quote that says, better to be thought of a fool than to open your mouth and leave no doubt. Yeah. I think the Cowboys feel like, honestly, they're in a 4-game stretch here. They think Cooper Rush is better. And I do kind of wonder if their thought process is Trey Lance's contract is about to run out and he's not going to be here anymore. Let's just leave that as an unknown for forever because we know he's not good enough. We don't need to show everybody else he's not good enough. And so I do think that those optics kind of play into it a little bit, where they just say, opportunity never came around. Cooper Rush was good for us. Dak Prescott, obviously was our starter before that. So the opportunity never rose. We appreciate it and be on your merry way. But I think that's honestly what it is. Trey Lance did not look like an NFL player in training camp. He was bad. And I think that you just hear internally from people over there, as bad as it can be at times for Cooper Rush, just because of limited ability, it's unanimous over there that no, Trey Lance is not anywhere close to being good enough to surpass Cooper Rush.
Yeah, that is rough. The fact that you're not even willing to take a flyer, that is a seismic level mistake. As far as McCarthy goes, and Bobby Belt, host of the Love of the Star podcast with us here on the Hoffman Show. You can listen to it anywhere you get your pods, including the free Odyssey app. When we talk about McCarthy, was there any rumblings late last year? And I know that this would have been made much harder by the result in the Green Bay game. But is there any thought to, should we have let McCarthy go and tried to keep DQ? And I realize it's a bit of a Washington-centric question since he wound up here, but was that ever really on the table for Jerry and company?
I think that there's a little bit of revisionist history from some Cowboys fans when they're talking about Dan Quinn. I love Dan Quinn. A lot of people love Dan Quinn. He did great things here with this defense, and a lot of people had wished that he would become a head coach. By the time the Green Bay game happened, they'd started to build this narrative of, man, you get people from that Shanahan or McVay coaching tree, and Dan Quinn's defenses just don't match up. And then that's what we got to target for. So, I mean, thanks for all you've done, but we need something else here. The name that you heard more people, I think, pushing for last year was not so much Dan, where a lot of people thought, man, I don't even care if somebody comes along and hires him. I don't want to bring him back as a defensive coordinator because he's maxed out. I think you saw more people clamoring for the idea of bring on Belichick. And then there were other people like myself who just said, bring on anybody, bring on a warm body. I don't care. Something's got to change because that head coach isn't cutting it. And so I think that it was less about Dan. There's maybe some of that in hindsight that's 2020. But I think that largely what you had was people just saying, I want Belichick. Belichick's available. Go make the move. Get rid of McCarthy. And I think for the Joneses, that would have been the only name that they would have really considered. And I think that was the name they were probably wrestling with that whole week after the Green Bay game when they were determining if McCarthy was going to come back or not.
Well, as of us speaking right now live on the radio, Belichick's still available because he's apparently been offered by North Carolina, but they're far apart on some stuff, and we'll see how that goes. Assuming that McCarthy's done, they'll just wait till the end of the season and then say, all right, thanks, Mike, for your service. Beyond with your bad self. What kind of job do you think this is with where they are from a cap situation, where they are with Dak, a couple of injuries now, and obviously dealing with whatever the Jones family circus throws at you on any given day in that job?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, I think, to this is such a unique job. I mean, I know that you've been familiar with the Cowboys job for, a lot of your career. And I think that when you look at it, it's very easy to say, man, this is not just as easy as who's the best coach or what does this fit here? Oh, go get me Ben Johnson and his X's and O's. Like, no, Dallas is a different beast. The way they operate is weird. It's peak George Steinbrenner days with the Yankees, where it's like, no, there's a whole other dynamic and a whole other factor. So I think if you are able to withstand those challenges or weather those challenges, it's not a great job if you're not winning. If you win here, it can build your legacy if that's what a coach is looking for, is to just solidify a legacy, cement a legacy. You, as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, can build your legacy to an extent that is not possible with any other job in the NFL. And so I think that for some people, that's really attractive. That's what was always really attractive about this job to Sean Payton, was that he thought that he famously has told people around Dallas for years that when I'm the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, yeah, people know who I am in New York, but when I'm the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, people know who I am in Tokyo. Like it's just a different sort of energy and brand awareness or legacy awareness. So I think similarly, that's probably why it's attractive to guys like Belichick or others that you hear rumblings about, but it's a very difficult job just from the organizational structure with Jerry being involved and their cap situation, which is really bad. And the questions that probably exist about, is Dak Prescott becoming injury prone? And what the hell did we see the first several weeks of the season that was so different from the guy we saw who finished second in MVP last year?
Well, see, that's the thing is, like, I think the swath of coaches who'd be willing to say, I'll deal with the Jerry stuff. Like, I know he's going to occasionally say things that drive me nuts. I know occasionally they're going to meddle. I know that there's all those complications, but hey, Will McClay is really good. For those that don't know, obviously Bobby very familiar. Will McClay is the personnel guy who really runs things in Dallas when Jerry's not meddling, and he's very, very, very good at his job. And so, hey, Will McClay's there. Like, the facilities are really good, and if you can deal with the little bit of the circus element to sometimes a lot of the circus element, it's worth it because you got good players, and that's been most of the last decade in Dallas with the great offensive line, and you've had Romo into Prescott, so your quarterback play is above average to something well above average. And I just think if I'm looking at this job right now, Bobby, I'm not interested at all because I don't know that I'm getting any of that, and I still have to deal with the expectations and the circus of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, and that's totally reasonable. I would think that I could definitely see coaches talking themselves into, look, they sustained 3 straight years of 12-5, and I'm more willing to bet on that's who they are rather than 1 year where a lot of different guys were on, the entire coaching staff was on 1-year deals. That can be a distraction in and of itself. Some of the time they missed, CeeDee Lamb missed all of training camp. They were having to limit their offense because of, rookies along the offensive line. Then they started getting hit by injuries. I still thought that this was a team, even when they were healthy, that was going to be below 500, just barely below 500. But I could definitely see somebody talking themselves into, I can win with that. And, you've been around NFL coaches. NFL coaches are very ego-driven. It's like, well, yeah, you couldn't do it, but I could. I can fix that. I can handle that. And so I think whoever comes into this job, and look, it's not completely impossible that it's Mike McCarthy returning. I still am putting it at like 1%, but there's enough buzz of Aikman saying something recently and Micah and Dak and others that you can't just totally ignore it. But I think that the reality is whoever they hire would have to have previous head coaching experience in the NFL. And the only name I could even see being in the ballpark of contention where they don't have previous head coaching experience and could get this job would be completely out of left field and absolutely no NFL experience coaching, and that would be Jason Witten.
You really think that Jerry's done some crazy stuff. That would be next level.
It would be out there, but you got to remember, Houston entertained the idea of Josh McCown. Now he's gone on to become a decent coach as a quarterback's coach. Jason Garrett, they were almost willing to do something. He had basically been a coach for about a year off the playing field before when they hired him, and it hadn't been clear yet if he was going to be the head coach or Wade Phillips. But here's the big advantage I would give Witten, and I don't know if it would work out, but the big advantage I would give Witten is what we just talked about. Mike McCarthy spent 30 years in the NFL. Mike McCarthy's been here in Dallas for the last 5 years. Mike McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. There's really not a lot that Mike McCarthy hasn't seen that the National Football League can throw at you. And Mike McCarthy still has not gotten used to how things are run in Dallas. The biggest advantage Jason Witten has, other than just leadership and different things like that, the CEO walk-around head coach that they might like coming up. The biggest advantage is that's somebody who would know better than almost any coach who could go hire how things operate and how to navigate it.
What is Witten doing these days? Like, we last saw him on Monday Night Football, then leaving and then playing again, and then he disappeared.
High school football coach. He is the head coach at Liberty Christian, which just won their second state title over the weekend. So, Look, last year, Tim Cowlishaw here in Dallas had done an interview with Jerry Jones about Dan Campbell and said, hey, when Detroit came to town, you Campbell on your team, yada, yada. And Jerry out of nowhere threw the quote to him, said, you know what, I think Jason Witten's got a lot of Dan Campbell-like qualities. And we asked him on the fan recently, asked him a couple weeks ago, just said, do you think Jason Witten could be a head coach one day? And he went raving for a minute and a half, saying absolutely. So I'm not saying it would be Witten, but I would not be stunned if when this job comes open, A, he gets an interview, and B, just remember that as a dark horse candidate. You guys there in D.C., you can be there in the Beltway. You guys can be pleasantly surprised, be ahead of the curve when you hear that Jason Witten gets interviewed. You can be ahead of the rest of the country.
All right, well, we'll take that. I don't think Jason Witten would say anything about biting kneecaps at his first press conference. He's far too sane for a Dan Campbell comparison, and I love Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I don't think he's saying biting kneecaps, but look, they gave him a lot of power. He used to throw guys out of practice. He once sent Joseph Randall home from practice. He once kicked Rico Gathers out of practice. So, I mean, he's operated running practice essentially before, even when Garrett was here.
What a time. There is a small part of me, Bobby, that misses it down there, that just misses knowing there's never a dull day, which, by the way, is what you get that 1%. Better than that about McCarthy. He's not. Jerry Jones wants attention, and another year of Mike McCarthy. That is the most boring thing you can do. There is 0% chance Mike McCarthy's coming back.
I would agree. I'm just giving myself the 1% because you've got to hedge against Jerry Jones is 82 years old, and there's just a comfort level in. Look, maybe that year was a one-off. I've got such limited time. I can't afford a reset.
Fair enough. Last thing for Bobby Belt here, producer down at 105.3 The Fan, the host of the excellent Love of the Star podcast, part of our Odyssey Sports Network. You can listen to it anywhere you get your pods, and of course that includes the free Odyssey app. So the rest of the season, they got 4 games to play. The last one, Washington will be down there. Considering how things went down last night, the punt snafu, giving up that play that just feels so. I mean, look, Jamar Chase is incredible, but come on, you give up a touchdown on a curl route with less than 2 minutes to go. What are we doing here? How do you think that McCarthy and the leadership down there can keep guys checked in, or did they leave the locker room last night going 1, 2, 3 Cancun, and this is going to get ugly down the stretch?
Honestly, I've kind of been surprised that the amount of engagement they have been able to maintain. There hasn't been a lot of quit yet. I would have expected more of it to this point, just because there's been tension at times between McCarthy and some of the offensive players and stuff over the 5 years. So I would have thought when things started turning, you'd see that. But it honestly hasn't been. Their effort hasn't been the issue. They're just bad. They don't have to you beat Team Tank or do anything else. They're just organically, naturally bad. They're a bad football team, and so they will continue to lose games no matter how invested that they are. They'll do things like you see last night where you don't have to. O'Rourke doesn't have to consciously do that. He'll just do it for you. And Deron Bland, who's even an All-Pro and is a really good player and played a really good game overall, you've got a guy who just lost his spatial awareness, it felt like, and just didn't know how to attack Jamar Chase in the open field when he caught the ball. And so, I mean, you'll still get those sort of things because they're not a very good football team.
Nope, but they did beat the Commanders, which is a real pain in the Commanders side right now.
Thanks for messing up my top 10 draft pick that I was going to cover next April. So thank you for that.
I mean, if we can call the league office, Bobby, and I think Commanders will take the win. You can take the loss. It helps both sides. I don't see what's wrong with this prospectus.
I think it's a beautiful sign of bipartisanship in the NFL to do that. So I'm with you.
Yeah, all right. We'll get on that with our next segment here. In the meantime, thank you kindly for your time. Always great to chat with you, and perhaps we'll have a little fun in Week 18. We'll do a crossover pod or something with you guys, just to send you off into the off season. Hopefully, the Commanders are very far behind, not just a week behind.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it.
All right. It's Bobby Belt with us here on the Hoffman Show. Again, the Love of the Star. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. It's interesting, Anthony, to hear him talk about that the effort and the engagement has actually been really high down there, because it does. Like, you see some of the post-game comments, and I think you see some of the other comments this season about how frustrated players are with, like, the tours and all these things. And maybe some of that's blown up a little bit because it's the Cowboys and whatever. I know some players, like, push back on some of that stuff when they were asked about it. But if you can keep it together for the last 4 games after a loss like that, knowing you've been eliminated, knowing the whole deal, then that speaks well to the leadership you have and the character you have in your locker room, which is why I'm very interested to see how the rest of the Cowboys season goes.
Nah, that's fair. I mean, Micah Parsons, like everything you guys were just talking about, was saying some of the same things in the post game and to the media yesterday, where he was just like, it's a tough loss, probably the hardest one of my career, including the playoff game, but it's my job to, try to keep these guys together. I'm just like, one, I think the playoff loss should definitely hurt a little bit more. But 2, if you can do your due diligence and try to, make the most of the season, try to win out, like, I think that would be respected. But at the same token, it will be interesting to see. Because you can say one thing and not necessarily do.
I mean, Micah's smart. He knows what to say.
Yeah.
Some
people don't, though.
No, that's true. And the thing is, like, if you're a guy who, like, if you're Micah, I'd probably want to shut it down if I was Micah. Like, I'll play the next couple games.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Because, like, a CD, at least he got paid. Like, but I'm trying to be ready for next season. I'm trying to make sure I get to the offseason healthy so I can try to do what I do in the offseason to take my game to the next level. The offseason is super critical for that. And when you miss offseason time, you don't grow as a player. So getting to the offseason super healthy. But for Micah, like, he's trying to get paid. And not that I think, like, something terrible would have to happen to him, and knock on wood that it doesn't, but, like, something terrible would have to happen for Micah not to get paid. But, like, especially when he's waiting, like, I'd probably be like, hey, let's let some of these younger cats play. Let's let some guys who maybe they're even older players, like, hey, let's let that dude who needs some extra snaps to get on tape and give him a chance to go out there and get paid this offseason and extend his career, get on a team somewhere. So those guys are always, I mean, that's the NFL, though, is like late in the season, yeah, some guys might check out and it's hard, but you also got guys playing for jobs. So that is always at least, a third, if not more than a half of the roster, just by the nature of how contracts work in the NFL. All right, great stuff from Bobby. Always appreciate his time. Great to have him on the show. When we get back, Take Command, we did a mailbag that had some of the key questions for the Commanders coming up in the latter half, or the last quarter, I guess, really, of the season, including after that monster rushing performance with Cornelius Lucas at right tackle. Any merit to keeping him there over Andrew Wiley when he returns? That's just one of the questions we tackle. And you can hear it next here on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. With the bye week, there is no Take Command Tape Tuesday, typically Tuesdays at 5:30, for the very simple reason that there's no game to break down. We can't tell you how Jaden Daniels played in the game on Sunday because Jaden Daniels didn't play in a game on Sunday. But we still wanted to get you your weekly dose of Logan Paulson in this spot. And so we asked for mailbag questions, and the full mailbag is available now in the Take Command feed, wherever it is that you get your podcast. But we wanted to share part of that here on the show with this group of questions that was all focused on this season. A lot of the questions that we got were actually focused on the future, off-season spending, what happens if Cliff leaves, all that kind of stuff. So if you want those answers, podcast. You want to know about some key questions for the rest of this season, don't go anywhere. Just listen to this.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It is the Take Command podcast. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen. It's late in the season, Logan. We're both battling. We're fighting through. So if the voices sound a little scraggly, we apologize. But we're gonna do our best to answer your mailbag questions today.
I was gonna say you actually sound pretty good.
You sound,
relatively speaking.
You sound like you're fighting. So
what's funny is I feel great though. Feel amazing.
See, I sound okay and don't feel great. So, put us together and you have one really great human. You also, on the other side, have someone who's dead. All right, so let's get into it. You submitted your questions all kinds of ways. We had a couple that came through via email, thanks to hoffmanshow.com's contact page. We had a couple that came through on Instagram, at hoffman.sports and at Logan_Paulsen82. And then we also had some that I put out the APB, if you will, on Blue Sky, and some folks chimed in there. So we're actually going to start with the one. There's a bunch of offseason questions, which I thought was interesting. It's like, hey, this team's in the thick of the playoff race, so what are they going to do after this season? We'll get there. But let's start off with the ones in season. And JVA asks, Wiley or Lucas? Very simple. This prompt for questions came pretty close after that Tennessee game where they ran like crazy with Cornelius Lucas in at right tackle. Now, Andrew Wiley, as we record this on Tuesday, he practiced on Monday and should be good to go this week. He is the starter, but would there be any, I want to say upside, would there be any merit to Cornelius Lucas actually staying at right tackle?
I don't personally think so. I think Lucas might be a better pass protector long term. I think he's just got the length, he's got the frame, he's got all the things you're looking for when you want when you're kind of looking for those pass protector guys. But in terms of how Wiley's played this year, I think he 100% deserves an opportunity to play more and has earned that starting opportunity. Now, is that for the foreseeable future? Is that for 5 years down the road? I don't know, but I will say for this year, when you look at him play, when you look at him battle, when you look at how he competes, when you look at how he finishes, like all those things are things that I think are super important. And really, I think part of what has made this offensive line so effective is not that they're the best athletes. It's like when you look at how Allegretti finishes, when you look at how Wiley finishes, when you look at how Cosme finishes, when you look at how Biadasz finishes, right? Those guys are grimy, nasty dudes that get down and dirty and finish the play to the whistle. And I think Wiley is a big piece of that identity. And so for me, again, Lucas has done a great job. Like he deserves all the credit in the world, but I think he has a role in that offensive line, which is to be the swing tackle. And when he comes in, he does a great job, which is exactly what we're looking for. But I think Wiley deserves a ton of credit, really.
Yeah, no, I think he does too. And I would just, for multiple reasons, I would stick with Andrew Wiley. The one you just said is kind of the football reason. And then there's kind of the locker room reason of, unless a dude is doing something ultra spectacular, right, you don't really let a guy lose his job to injury. And so Wiley hasn't done anything
That's a great point.
that merits his losing his job. And so, yes, Big Luke had a fantastic game. I think he played really well at left tackle too when he was rotating with Brandon Coleman. But at the end of the day, like Coleman's your future left tackle, Wiley's your starter, and upsetting the apple cart is not worth it because there's no real gigantic payoff there either way.
Right.
And so from the limitations too of what you can do from a mobility standpoint, some of your screen game, things like that. Once Wiley's back out there as the better athlete, I think it is definitely worth. It's a good question, but the answer is
it's a great question. I think also people are looking at it, and you can empathize with this, Craig. You see a performance like they had versus Tennessee, and you say, man. What was the difference there? And Lucas in for Wiley was one big difference, obviously. I think just the shift in mindset is also a thing that needs to be pointed out. But I understand why people are asking it. But I do think, like, for the reason you said, for the reason I just said. I think Wiley deserves that opportunity to keep that job.
Yeah. The other big difference was Tennessee decided to line up with like 7 yards in between all their dudes, and it made blocking pretty easy. And Brian Robinson was back, so that tends to help
Weird move
as well. Yeah. All right. As for speaking of the run game, but on the other side, got a couple of questions that I think are related. So I'm going to lump them together and give the shout outs to those who submitted them. Stephanie Lee responded to my prompt on Blue Sky, said, hoping you can provide insight on why our defense is having trouble stopping the opponent's run game, even though it was better last week. And then this is a longer question from Daniel that I got via email that I think is related because it talks about like the defensive scheme and specifically the D-line. Hey, Craig, this is a question for the mailbag. One of the more pleasant surprises this season is the defense under Joe Witt with all the misfits he has dealt with from the past regime, i.e. Forbes, Jamin, Big Phil. Is it concerning that Duran has not had more impact this year? In spots, I have seen him cause pressure and eat up blocks to free others, but other than that, I have not heard his name in games this year. If he were consistently adding to the pass rush or is constantly in the backfield with TFLs, I wouldn't bat an eye, but is it getting to the point where I forget he is on the field? I'm not sure this is a system thing because he does not have to play more than 90% of the snaps as he did in years past. Obviously, system is a lot more than rotation, but I think the run game efficacy and Duran's performance are obviously tied. So what do we make of how Joe Witt Jr. is coached up this, and all the other coaches that are involved in that, Dale Tapp, et cetera, are coaching up this D line and how they're performing right now?
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing that jumps out when you're watching film is there is a little bit of a personnel thing. Like when you watch teams that are really good at stopping the run. Like I was watching getting ready for the next show. I was watching the Saints and the New York Giants, right? And the New York Giants are not necessarily the best team in the world at stopping the run, but Dexter Lawrence was out. So they had this guy, Riley, who's in playing nose for them. And then all the other dudes on the interior, like these big dudes who understand how to like sit double teams and the structure of the defense. Like they're playing a jam front, so it makes it really hard for the offensive line, specifically the three guys on the interior, to get double teams and combinations to the next level. In our nickel stuff, like where the Commanders are in a lot of 4-down stuff. And when you think about 4-down versus a 6-man blocking surface, you usually have the opportunity to get 2 really clean double teams on the interior. And the reason we're playing nickel is partially because we want kind of these 2 high coverage shells behind it. And when you get those, like you need a specific type of dude in there that's going to be able to split that double team and kind of sit a knee and be strong at the point. And Drazan's not really built that way. Drazan does flash. Like when the double team's loose, he can penetrate it and make a play. Duran's the same way, but it is challenging. It's tough. And the spacing of the front, I think you saw that versus Tennessee. Like, Tavondre Sweat's one of the best, by PFF metric, one of the best run-stuffing defensive tackles in the NFL. Jeffrey Simmons is very disruptive. But in this game, I think you see how in the Tennessee game, you saw how difficult it was for them to be successful because of how they spaced their front. So sometimes like a defense is built for that defensive tackle to be successful and make a lot of plays. Then other times it's a little bit more challenging. And I think there's a little bit of a, robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario here in terms of like, you can't have everyone optimized all the time. You're basically looking for 80% efficiency from the entire defense. And right now, this 4-down spacing, putting a little bit more stress on those defensive tackles, to me seems like the right solution, because again, you want to, the most important thing to me with this defense is eliminating explosive plays. And I'm actually okay if the other team runs the football a little bit, as long as they're not gashing you with like explosive runs, 10, 15-yard runs, which we haven't really had a huge issue of that this year. It's been death by 1,000 paper cuts. The good thing about that is that at some point you're going to have a neutral run, and you just got to maximize. And I think this defense has done a really good job of doing that. So that's kind of what I would say. This is something that every 4-down spacing team has to deal with. That every team does, right? And when you go around and you watch a lot of football, the 3 technique gets double teamed, the shade gets double teamed, like all that stuff is what's happening. And you see it happening here with the Commanders. And I think that's part of the reason why they're having a hard time. And again, you can go out and you can find, a big hulking nose to kind of sit in there and eat up those double teams. But those guys, because of how college football is, are becoming harder and harder to find.
Yeah, and it's also why like Carl Davis is maybe going to be playing over Phil Mathis / was in the Tennessee game, and he played and like played pretty well. It wasn't a ton of snaps, but like he gets out there, he shows some things. I think Sheldon Day has done a decent job of that this year at times, and like to Dan's credit and Adam's credit and Daryl Tapp's credit, like they know what they're looking for in that piece. And Dan's background as a D-line coach certainly helps. And so it doesn't have to be the flashy whatever guy. Like they know exactly what they're looking for, and they've gone and found the discount bargain bin versions of it. But maybe that is somewhere where they spend a little money or invest some more draft capital potentially moving forward to go with the quick penetrating type of Jerzon Newton. And then we'll see what they do ultimately with Daron Payne. I think part of the problem earlier in the year, and it's unfortunate for John, but like, when you have John Allen, Daron Payne, and Jerzon Newton, like all three of those guys are like that. So you constantly have the undersized, penetrating type, and that's tough. You need those guys to then do something that's not their best or their highest and best use. And so I think that was a struggle earlier in the year. I think the other thing I'll just add real quick is like, if you need a stop late in the game, can you manufacture a stop? Like think of like the end of the Baltimore game. And that's a tough example because Baltimore does this to everyone. But it also like shows you how hard it is, and especially against the best teams. But like if you're down late and you need to get a stop on, 3 stops and then use your timeouts and then see what you can do with, a minute left after you get the ball back after a punt situation, can you stop the run then? And that is, luckily they haven't been in that position a ton this year, and it's always better to just avoid that position in the first place and just like get up early. And we've seen when the Commanders can do that, then they don't have a lot of stress late in games, which has been nice and is also very rare because blowout wins don't happen at the frequency that they've happened for Washington this year.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a better point, is this team is built in a certain way as of right now. When I was in Atlanta with Dan, like they were built to kind of play with a lead, same thing with Dallas, like that defense is built to play with a lead. And there's value to that, right? There's value to kind of having, pass rushing upside at all spots, like Daron, Jerzon, the defensive ends are, their name's Fowler and all these guys, right? Luvu, those guys do a good job of being like kind of upside pass rushers. Are they the best on first and second down? No, but you've structured this defense with a vision, right? And I think that's okay, right? And I do think we also talked about this too, like how there are pieces and talent kind of missing from this equation. Big Phil was supposed to be that guy for the Ron Rivera regime, right? And so has he lived up to that billing? He's flashed at points this year, but obviously the consistency isn't there for the staff. So I do think, again, this team is good. I think they're punching above their weight class. There's a lot of things to be excited about, but I think these are the types of questions where you say, hey, can we find somebody, maybe a day 3 pick or a guy in the 3rd round that has this skill set that can complement and supplement what we see in Jerzon and what we see in Daron. And I think that's the thing in fleshing out a roster. It's not always the top guys. It's the depth and role player pieces. Like I think John Bates is a great example of this. Like John Bates is maybe the best blocking inline, Y in the NFL. And is he going to catch a ton of passes? No, but does he add value? Does he complement Ben Sinnott? Does he complement Zach Ertz in a nice way? Absolutely. And you need that guy on your roster, just like you need this. And it doesn't need to be, I think you made a great point with Sheldon Day. It doesn't need to be a big person. It just needs to be someone who understands how to stop the run from the interior defensive line spot. And it works with the edge guys too. Like Fowler, I think, has been great. I think unequivocally great, like in terms of his ability to rush the passer, his ability to find explosive plays in key moments, specifically on 3rd and short situations, but he's not going to set a great vertical edge for you. So can you find somebody again? And I think when he was brought in, like his role was exactly what it is now. He's playing more snaps. So can you find somebody, hey, like on 1st and 2nd down, that's going to like dent that edge, make this thing a little bit harder. And again, those are long-term depth personnel decisions that kind of flesh this roster out.
Right. And Cleveland Ferrell's supposed to be that guy, and he's been in and out of the lineup with some injuries this year and, kind of been surpassed on the depth chart by Fowler because he's played so well. And obviously Dorrance is a consistent guy there. So, they have some versions of that, but it's something that they'll continue to work on moving forward. Kind of last thing on this related topic. an email from Brett, who said, after the Philly loss, Logan talked about how there was a noticeable talent discrepancy, especially the push from the line. How do we combat that in our next go around with him? Really, this could apply to both lines of scrimmage. This could apply for the Commanders' offensive line trying to push Jalen Carter around, and this can obviously apply for the group that we just talked about going against Jordan Mailata and company, which might be the best O-line in football, them or Detroit.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Lane Johnson to speak how talented that group is.
I just picked one. Lane, you're awesome too.
Pick any of them, right? Lane and Dickerson, right?
Yeah. Both Mailata and Lane Johnson, fantastic blockers, fantastic singers. Like they're multi-talented fellas.
Multi-talented. So I think watching the Tennessee game, because it was also something that happened in the Dallas game, right? And there was a specific type of player, specific style of player that seems to be giving them a hard time. And that's that penetrating kind of up the field 3 technique. I know Diggy Zua for Dallas kind of presented some similar stuff, specifically earlier in the game. And one of the things that I absolutely loved about the Tennessee game is they had a couple of answers for that type of player, which they had not shown prior to this or consistently prior to this season, right? They were like, oh, we're going to run trap. You trap penetrating 3 techniques. Like, look at our defense. Like, what hurts our defense? Trap and wham, right? Because our guys are penetrating vertical, one gap kind of guys. So versus Simmons, who is, again, one of the most disruptive run-stopping players in the NFL, we're going to trap him. We're going to wham him. And we're going to get big gashes off of that like teams have been gashing us. And the way they got to that, I love the setup, right? We kind of had, this kind of Bates little motion in the backfield. We're going to run duo a couple times. We're going to run receiver lead a couple times. We're going to run wham a couple times. And I think that schematic element is something that gets me excited because, hey, now Jalen Carter, you don't have to worry about. You can't just get up the field all the time because we're not always running bounce. We're not always running GT. We're not always running outside zone or whatever we're running, right? We're running something that's going to give you problems if you're not paying attention. And so I think those things are enough in a game plan to disrupt. So I love how they're already starting to think about how do we handle this penetrating 3 technique. And I think that's the thing is, we've talked about on the defensive side of the ball a lot, but I think you see it on the offensive side of the ball quite a bit, is these little schematic elevations, right? Schematically, you're not going to change. You're not going to take a bad roster and make them good, but you can take a good roster and make them above average. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing here with some of these little tweaks, some of these little wrinkles. And I think you saw it last week versus Tennessee, which again makes me excited offensively for combating that Philly defense. And again, they're not going to give you a lot of different fronts. They're not going to give you a lot of different looks. They're not going to they do what they do. They play a cover 2 shell. They get into quarters. They get into 6. They do some man coverage, but they're not going to play 8-man boxes. And that's how that team is built. So you kind of know what you're going to get. So if you can handle this one element, they're going to be in a much better spot. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think if you get the support from the offense, on the defensive side of the ball, if you get the support from the offense that we were expecting them to get, I think you look at that defensive performance and say, man, those guys flat got after Philly for 3 quarters. Flat got after them. Yeah. And if they can give a similar performance and the offense can play, what would you say, Craig? 50% better? 75% better?
I mean, at least 50. Like that, the offense was so unproductive in that game that it's just you had no shot defensively, and you knew they were just going to wear down, and especially like Philly specifically wears teams down. Like I've watched more of them and been reading more stuff with them and kind of following them a little more closely, obviously, as they've gotten good in the back half of the season. And this week against Carolina is the first week in forever that they haven't had a Saquon 50-yard run at some point during the game. Like, not literally, but like some huge chunk play, like 30-plus yards, where especially in the second half, just that bit, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, all those guys that we talked about, Jordan Mailata on down the list, like Mekhi Becton, like it's a big freaking dude. And they just lean on you, and they run the ball consistently, and Jalen's a threat in the run game. And eventually you just get tired, like physically tired, and you make either you just don't have the push or you make a mental mistake, and there goes Saquon for 60. And Carolina somehow survived that, in part because they were able to convert some first downs and like move the ball just enough, and they have a shot at the end if Leggett catches that ball. So I think, if you can just get even 50% better, nevertheless 75, to where you're converting some first downs, it's not as many 3-and-outs, you've got a chance to hold up late in a way that you didn't have really a chance, even though you held the lead in the fourth quarter of the first game.
Yeah, 1000%. So I think when you think about it as a complementary football type scenario, I think you feel pretty good about. I feel really good about the second matchup. If Cliff can continue to find ways to get and talk about maybe the worst team, the worst defense to have on a short week, it's got to
Yes.
be Philly, right?
Yeah,
Because again, they
100%.
kind of do what they do. Vic Fangio does a great job of kind of pulling from his Rolodex and saying these are the defensive coverages we want to be excellent at, and they do a great job, you know. And so if you can find a way to increase your rushing efficiency on first down, which we just talked about, how schematically they've already shown an ability to do that,
Also,
and then
B-Rob missed that game, didn't he?
yeah, he missed that game. All right, no, he
So,
played that game, but only had like 10 snaps or something like that. He played the first quarter. Remember that? Remember he had a nice run in the first little bit there.
oh yeah. So like that. I mean, how different is this offense with B-Rob? Like
Yeah.
that could be your 50% right there. It's just having
Yeah.
him for the whole game.
Yeah, and so I think those types of, again, that little schematic elevation, finding a way, again, I feel very confident that Jaden, after seeing the defense, having a whole week of prep, well, again, there's even if that's 25%, but I think that'll give you 50 right there. Having B-Rob kind of more consistently locked in with more efficient kind of third down execution in the game, like, even though the roster, again, compared to Philly, and most rosters compared to Philly are quote unquote under talented, but this is where the kind of composition of the team, the coaching, the scheme is the stuff that kind of levels the playing field. And, quite frankly, offensively, Philly, say what you want about the offensive line, the running game. I mean, they threw the ball for 108 yards or something
Yeah,
last
you
game.
add in the sacks, it was like 80. But yeah, Jalen finished with 108 yards passing. He was awful.
And that's been the last 2 weeks. And again, that's something you've seen from him even in our game, right? Not super efficient throwing the football. And so if the game flow flips, which they haven't had to deal with because their defense is playing so well, let's say they're down by 10, right? What does that look like for Jalen Hurts? And I don't have a good answer. I would imagine not great because again, they're not built to do that consistently.
But that's fine for them most of the time because they're really good and they're not finding themselves down. The other two things for the rematch is I would hope that Cliff moves Terry around a little bit, gets him away from Kenyon Mitchell, which obviously he's shown that he was going to do that in the Tennessee game, and just a little bit goes a long way. And then Marshawn Lattimore, the man-to-man stuff on the outside, to just be able to play that and trust, like, hey, Lattimore's got A.J. Brown. Like, we're good there, and see what that kind of effect that has. Okay, YouTube, hopefully we're back. But anyway, the point is, Anthony, that it is 6 o'clock. It is a Tuesday, and that means that it is time for us to dive into our NFL tier rankings. Are you ready to dive into the NFL tier rankings?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I was hoping that you would say that. All right, so with all of that said, as the NFL music rips, runs, and is ready to go here, we have our prime contenders, which I don't think has changed that much. Anthony, did you paste them in the rundown? Oh, there we go. There, the rundown just updated. We love a Google Doc. Okay, Kansas City Chiefs. They're clear. We created a new category, Anthony, for the Chiefs or for the Jets and the Giants that said, hey, this is actual hell.
Yeah, we got to add a team.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Oh, are you talking about adding another tier?
I think there should be a tier above prime contenders that just says blessed, and that's where the Chiefs live.
And highly favored, yes.
I mean,
I would agree.
What are we doing? It's absurd. So yeah, the Chiefs, needless to say, they're still in the prime contender category. The Baltimore Ravens, they were on a bye.
Yeah, they were.
They get to stay. The Detroit Lions, they won. They get to stay. The Buffalo Bills lost, but I don't think anything really changed. I guess the big question we'd have to have with Buffalo is, did the Rams do something that makes us have questions about their defense in the long term?
I mean, all right. This is what I'll say about the Bills' defense. To their defense, they were playing a very good offense. And we talked about it, when they have the chimes of the world, the offensive line is there. You have Puka, you have Kupp, you have Stafford all playing at the highest level. This is historically one of the best defenses. Offenses. I don't think we can use that game itself because, again, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they held some good offenses to, 20 or, 18 and things of that nature. It's just this offense, they had a day. They had a day. They were aggressive on fourth down. They made sure not to give Josh Allen the ball back. I think the Rams went into this game with the same mentality that the Commanders had when they played the Bengals. We cannot give Joe Burrow the ball back. We cannot give Josh Allen the ball back. And that's why they were so aggressive even on fourth down. So I wouldn't say anything bad about the Bills.
I'm not going to say I wouldn't say anything bad about the Bills defense because I don't think that they're like – I don't think that's like a great unit over there.
It's not.
But the Chiefs don't have a great unit on either side right now. I don't know that the Ravens defense is great. I don't know that the Eagles offense is great. And so those are some of just the other teams. I don't think the Steelers offense is great. I know the Steelers offense isn't great. It's potent, as is the Eagles. But I don't think that there's like a team, especially with the Lions being as banged up as they are, that's like great on both sides of the ball. And I think the Bills' offense is more good than their defense is bad. Mm-hmm. And I think to your point, they faced a Rams team that is very, 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 very good. And they also had a blocked punt return for a touchdown. So it's not as bad as the numbers look. Not that giving up 36 instead of 42 or whatever the number, 35 instead of 42 is exactly killing it. Or I guess they gave up 44. But the point is, it's not like they played great. Stafford and them were great. The Rams present specific challenges. I think the Bills' safety play is an issue. It's something they'll probably address next offseason. But I think it's also worth pointing out, like on the long term, the long lens for Buffalo, like they weren't supposed. This was supposed to be the down year.
It was,
right. They were supposed to take a year step back, and they have roster-wise because of some cap decisions they made. They let Diggs go. They eat some dead money on some stuff here, some other guys there. And then they're set up with decisions they made to be really aggressive this offseason. And Josh Allen's playing at this level, and they're still a prime contender. Like, that's how good that dude is. Oh, that reminds me. I need to cut up you apologizing to Josh Allen yesterday and send it to Will Dawkins.
Yeah.
I'll remind me in the next commercial break.
Hey, look, I did challenge him. I said, hey, You're so good. Go out there and show us you're so good. And he's doing
Are
that,
you
Craig.
trying to take credit for Josh Allen's season?
I'm not taking any credit for
That's
Josh.
certainly what that just sounded like.
But all I was saying is before the season, if he was as good as everybody was saying he was, with little to no weapons, go out there and make those weapons around you better since you're so good. Just like Lamar
So are you
had
willing
do
to admit that in hindsight he's been this good all along?
Hey, look,
That
maybe
you maybe have missed? Because sometimes we
I
all do
think
that
so.
in this
I
business.
think so.
You know, sometimes we do that in this business where it's like, oh, I wasn't actually wrong. The circumstances changed. And sometimes that's true, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I wasn't wrong about that. Like that guy that I said was bad started like he was bad. Now he's playing good. This one you were just wrong. Josh
I was
Allen's
wrong.
been great for years, and you just were slow on that particular to board that particular jet.
yeah, sadly.
All right.
I will say he has done a great job of protecting the ball this year. Interceptions, the bonehead interceptions he used to throw, those were very concerning, but it seems as though he's done away with those. So that
He is in his prime.
Yes,
and he
he's
is
in his bag.
his prime is really good.
Yeah.
All right, last two teams in prime contenders joining the Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Bills. Both these teams won, and they are playing each other this weekend. By the way, Detroit, Buffalo this weekend as well. So we got 6 teams in this tier, and 4 of them are playing each other.
That's dope.
That's awesome. Steelers, Eagles. Did you see Mike Tomlin's comments on this game?
I did not.
I got to send it to you because it's really funny for real things. But for those that are almost home and may not hear real things later, he called it the Pennsylvania State Championship game.
That's actually funny.
He like had a nice little smirk on his face when he did it. Oh, by the way, is there a new Hard Knocks tonight? That would be sweet. We'd love to watch a Hard Knocks tonight. Anyway, Steelers, they won. They get to stay. Eagles, they won barely. But I think they've been so good. Even if they had lost, if Leggett had caught that ball for Carolina, I think the Eagles would still be staying up.
The Eagles is concerning, Craig. I'm not going to lie.
You're concerned about. I was the idiot earlier in the season when I was
hold on.
concerned about
For
the Eagles.
An entirely different reason. You were concerned about whether or not they'd be able to, put it together, the off the field stuff. But now it's hitting the media. Teammates are talking about it. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown seem to have had a fall in because so I have A.J. Brown in my fantasy team in one of my other leagues. He was open so many times, Craig, and I'm just like, why isn't he throwing him the ball? Why is he not throwing him the ball?
For those that may have missed A.J.
my
Brown's
gosh.
direct quote after the game, he was asked, what needs to be better? And A.J. Brown says, passing. That's not good for a wide receiver.
No.
Jalen, I said the vibes were bad and all that kind of stuff, but the part of the reason the vibes are bad is because Jalen Hurts is a limited player. He's really good at the stuff that he's good at, and which the stuff he's good at is really useful. He's a great scrambler. He's one of the best scramblers in the league. He saves their butts all the time with his legs, but sometimes he is an arsonist fireman. He gets them in 3rd and 11 because he misses 17 open receivers on 1st and 2nd down, and then he runs and makes a miraculous play for 13 yards on 3rd and 11. It's like, oh, what a competitor. It's like just hit the dig on 1st down for 7, and then hit the curl or hit the slant or whatever. No, their offense is concerning, but it's also like the later they go, their offensive line still looks like that, and Saquon still looks like what he looks like. I think we're okay. They're still prime contenders. Okay, there were 3 teams that we had an interesting but not quite good enough that we gave a carrot to. One of them, I don't know why. I feel like we copied and pasted it wrong. The Rams. Did I just copy and paste them? No, sorry. They're interesting but not good enough. Okay, we'll get to them in a second. I scrolled down too far. Puncher's chance teams. There were 2 of them that we said we gave the carrot. So 2 teams to consider for prime contenders here. The Green Bay Packers. They lost.
Yep.
But they competed right down to the bitter end.
Yeah. It's tough, man. Who do they have on the docket this week?
The Packers this weekend are playing the Seahawks on Sunday Night Football.
I think we leave them with a carrot. I think they
because
they have
lost.
to. Yeah.
You can't advance on a loss.
Yeah, win a game against another team that is in the playoffs right now, leading their division.
Let me ask you a different question then. I don't know that it's not. I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out answer, to be honest.
Okay.
Because it's easy to just be like, we'll wait, we'll make the decision next week. But as opposed to like, we move them up, we move them down. And maybe a week from now, I'm like, why did we move them up? But are there teams in the prime contenders division that you would pick in a head-to-head matchup with the Packers, or that you would pick the Packers over them? Like if the Chiefs and the Packers played this weekend, who would you pick?
To be honest, I would probably go with the Packers.
I think the Packers are better. I'd probably pick the Chiefs because Mahomes has voodoo stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, that's kind of my point. Ravens, I'd probably pick the Ravens. The Lions, I'd probably pick the Lions. The Bills, I'd probably pick the Bills. The Steelers, I think I'd pick the Packers. And the Eagles, I'd probably
go
pick
with
the Eagles.
Packers over the Bills, just saying.
So that tells me that they kind of belong in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
All right, Packers, even though you lost, you're going up.
Okay.
So then that means what do we do with the Vikings?
The Vikings go up.
Vikings, they smashed Atlanta. They had the carrot. I guess by nature, if we're going to follow our own rules, they belong going up. It's hard for me to get past the Sam Darnold of it all, but it's a lot easier to get past the Sam Darnold of it all when they went on or when Darnold threw 5 touchdown passes. So, all right, that leaves prime contenders with the Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Steelers, Eagles, Packers, Vikings. That leaves puncher's chance thin, but there's a couple teams you need to consider coming up and joining the ranks of the Commanders. We'll get to those teams next, but first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports presented by Wawa. Chicken how you wanna at Wawa with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches.
Westwood One presents Today in Women's Sports. The newest team in the WNBA, the Golden State Valkyries, just held their expansion draft.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Continuing with our NFL tier rankings, the prime contenders are set for the week. Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Steelers, Eagles, Packers, Vikings. Now, a puncher's chance. Anthony, I think all four teams that are here right now are going to stay, led by the Commanders. Chargers, Broncos, and Seahawks. Chargers would be the only team that I would even remotely consider, as they're just super banged up. But I think they've continued to fight, and losing on that doink field goal at the end, they're where they belong.
Yeah, I love the Chargers. They are super banged up, man. I feel for those guys. But the brand of football that they play, I guess it makes sort of kind of sense.
They need to find a running back. Like
they need multiple. They need more than one, though. You can't just have one.
Yeah, I mean, J.K. Dobbins being out, that's the problem. And, like, Gus Edwards just hasn't been the answer. So, you know, it feels like there's always a back somewhere you can go find. Someone on a practice squad, someone, you know, a vet that's ready to just, I'll lace it up one more time. Like, they got to have someone they can go find and get that running game going again. Now, a couple teams that we need to definitely bring up. The one that's a definite, one that's we'll consider, is the Los Angeles Rams. Mm-hmm. They have a puncher's chance. Why do we even move them down?
Because they had the offense wasn't clicking. It didn't look as polished and good the weeks prior. I think they had lost like 2 straight or something like that.
Yeah, well, they got some guys back on the O-line, and they're cooking. The Rams, I want to put like brackets around them, meaning do not remove them until they've been eliminated. Like, they're always 1 week from dropping 40 on someone. That's nasty. That is a puncher's chance. Their haymaker, pretty big. The other team that we have starred, are carroted, up arrowed, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They won. Their opponent was bad. It wasn't pretty. I mean, they ultimately did kind of blow out Vegas, but that game was way closer for a long time, and like they were facing Desmond Ridder by the end. Do we think that the Bucs have a puncher's chance ability? Do they belong in the same neighborhood as the Commanders, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Seahawks, and the Rams?
I think they do, because I think they're going to win their division.
I think that is literally the correct answer. They're going to win their division. So I think by that point they have a chance. And like, look, that offense, you know, Baker wakes up feeling dangerous.
Yep.
I gotta say, man, I was watching some Bucs Saints tape the other day. When Baker plays with confidence and just starts ripping balls,
man, it
is as fun to watch him play quarterback as anyone in the entire league. And I mean that literally. Josh Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, just pure fun. It's not going to be as good necessarily, which is part of what makes it fun. But, oh, my God, when he just decides, like, that guy, that's who I'm throwing to, pew, just starts darting people, God, that is fun.
And they gave the Lions some run last year in the playoffs, too, so.
Yeah.
Baker's good, man. I'm so glad he revamped his career, man.
I am too. And I think it's also, you know, between what he and Darnold are doing, it shows, like, just because a guy falls out of favor in one place or like fails compared to the expectation where he's drafted, you give him a couple years to develop, send him to a McVay or a Shanahan for a year, and comes out the other side.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting but not quite good enough tier. I don't know that anybody's going to move out of this necessarily. Houston, they were on a bye, so they didn't go anywhere. The Falcons, they're just annoying. They're only interesting because you're like, why aren't you better?
It should be way better, man. Kyle Pitts is so underutilized in that offense.
Is he, or is he just not that good? Like, he's super freakishly talented from a physical trait standpoint, but eventually at some point it can't just be on.
It's not like he's
always
dropping balls though. Like,
but is he running routes in timing? Like, is he subtle and nuanced enough? Like,
isn't
I don't.
That on the offensive coordinator scheme this guy open if you really want to get him the ball?
You can't scheme just because a dude's fast doesn't mean. How many fast dudes have there been in the league? Like, yeah, you can get good matchups, but like, you still got to win them.
True.
Like, I don't watch enough Falcons all 22 to know if he's open all the time, but eventually it's just like, you are who you are. Like, the best players figure it out. And it's not like he's got a quarterback who wouldn't look for him.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirk played with Jordan Reed.
And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, Kirk loves the tight end. T.J. Hawkinson when he was in Minnesota, really good. Like Jordan Reed, of course. Like
if you're that good, do you need to be schemed open?
You're right.
You just run your routes and you're the primary and win.
Valid points, Craig.
Not that you can't enhance guys. I believe in the power of scheme, but geez, eventually it's on you. Anyway, the Indianapolis Colts, they were on a bye. The Bengals.
I will say this, Craig.
Yeah.
I will say this. So the Colts have the Broncos this Sunday. Big win. If they win Sunday,
they're not in puncher's chance.
I think they can make some noise.
No.
I'm not saying we put a star next to them just yet, but they'll be one of the teams I'll be looking at.
No, they're interesting. Week in, week out, they can play up. And if Anthony Richardson, catches a heater, fine. If dudes could catch footballs for him, that would be nice too.
Oh my gosh! Don't get me started.
Cincinnati Bengals, interesting, not good enough. If somehow by hook or by crook they can make a run, their offense is nasty,
aren't they?
I don't think they're fully
yet.
eliminated. The Cowboys got eliminated from the division last night.
Yeah.
And if not eliminated from the playoffs. Dolphins, you barely beat the Jets.
They're still alive. Yeah, they're still alive.
Congrats, you're exactly where you belong. Cardinals, you had a chance to be interesting, or to be better than interesting. You're not. You're just interesting. And then the Carolina Panthers continue to fight and be interesting. They are the definition of interesting, but not quite good enough.
Nope.
And that means there's one team that I skipped over here that has an asterisk next to their name. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Don't do it.
Chicago Bears.
It's time.
Welcome to Poopsville.
It's time.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts. They had to fire Eberflus. But giving Thomas Brown 2 promotions in the matter of 3 weeks, it's very stupid. Very stupid. To go from passing, not because he's not necessarily the best guy for the job, but eventually just go hey, let's find our D-line coach or something to take on the head coaching responsibilities, knowing that the most important thing for our long-term franchise is Caleb. And so now Thomas Brown, because apparently there's a story they told on the broadcast. Thomas Brown took the time to call every single player on the Bears roster, which is an incredible story and a great human thing to do. Buddy, that's a lot of time to call 53 dudes when you need to be game planning for the San Francisco 49ers.
Gosh.
You don't have time to do both. And not to mention, when they fired Flus, they also lost their defensive play caller. And then the first game back, guess who the new DC was, who I think was their D-line coach. A guy who had never called plays going against Kyle Shanahan. Should have seen that one coming.
Yeah,
that was a dumb pick by me to think Chicago might cover that game.
Yeah,
emotions can't overcome that. And by the way, emotionally, not great. Their offense looked inept. They had 4 yards in the first half. Kittle was running all over the place. Chicago Bears, welcome to Poopsville. Okay, from no chance teams, Raiders, check. Jags, congrats, you won the worst football game of the season. Patriots were on a bye. Titans will come back to you in a moment. Saints. Yikes. Cowboys.
they got a dub.
But they lost their quarterback and they're not good.
Yeah.
Are they? The thing is about the Saints, record-wise, they don't belong here. Record-wise, they and Carolina should switch.
Yeah.
But the chance, it's no chance and interesting, but not quite good enough.
Yeah.
The Saints aren't interesting.
At all.
There's nothing about them that's interesting. They just have no chance. Cowboys, you're in no chance. Browns, no chance. Niners. Are the Niners? The Niners are actually interesting again. If Purdy's going to play like that.
Yeah, Purdy did look good.
And all of a sudden, Luminore's back. Tafunga's back.
Uh-oh. Say it ain't so.
Look, I know that had a lot more to do with the Bears than the Niners, but they play the Rams on Thursday Night Football this week. And they beat the Rams. They and the Rams have the same record.
Yeah.
So they're technically alive. And then the Bears we just put. Last but not least, last movement of the week. Tennessee Titans. Got bad news for you. You're going to actual hell. You are joining the previously we're making a rule, Anthony. Actual hell is a tier. We can't possibly put teams in that until week 8 or 9 next year. Yeah. So when we do this, or when we do the NBA version, no one gets to go to actual hell till post. Well, I don't know, the Wizards, not so great, but they're there on purpose. Yeah. So that's the thing. The Jets, the Giants, they were trying to be good this year, and they find embarrassing ways to lose every week. You're in actual hell. Tennessee Titans, you had 2 first and goals, out of which you got 0 points.
Yeah.
You lost 10-6 to Mac Jones. Actual hell for you.
I love it, Craig. I love it. And once you enter actual hell, there's no escape. You're stuck.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's probably correct. Okay, so that's the tiers for this week. Read them and weep. We'll do it again next week. And then we'll do it the week after that, the week after that, and then the week after that's the actual playoffs. So the tiers don't matter. Everything wipe the slate clean, and we'll see how things go as we get towards January. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Anthony, what are we doing? Mystery box next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up here. Before we kind of really re-enter our usual rhythm of the week, Anthony, tomorrow, Wednesday, it's like, oh yeah, Wednesday. There's a game. Kind of this weird last day of the bye week, if you will, here on the Hoffman Show. Tomorrow, Logan and I are going to record the Saints preview, so we'll get that out to you on Thursday on Take Command. But we'll hear from Dan Quinn tomorrow on the show, Jaden Daniels, see how he spent his bye week. You'll hear some of that off the top of the show, and then obviously the Pick 6 at 6 will have the best sound and the biggest storylines of the day. As for everything else going on in the world of sports, I think, Anthony, it's a perfect opportunity for us to kind of wrap up some loose ends on a bunch of different things. It is time for another edition of This, That, and the Other Thing. And let's start with the college football playoff, because we haven't had a chance to really talk about this yet. And the arguments, I think, are really interesting about which teams get left out. As we talked about last week, I like the fact that no team that got left out is like, we could have won the champion. Like, we have a say for the championship. It's like, well, Alabama, you shouldn't have lost to Vandy. Hey, Miami, you're ticked. You shouldn't have lost to Syracuse in the season finale. All these other teams that get left out, you had games that you could have won where it's not like you have undefeated conference champions being left out like in the past. That said, some of the same old problems and the same old arguments are coming up, Anthony, which is if you are an Alabama and you say, hey, we got 3 losses, why should we ever schedule anyone tough? If all we have to do is say, like, we're in the best conference, we just have to win games, we're not going to be rewarded for scheduling bold. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened here, specifically because I also just said 30 seconds ago, hey, Alabama, you're mad. Go beat Vandy, which was a conference game. But I think the point stands of I would much rather reward teams for being bold and taking chances than I would teams that are just trying to get to the season, end of the season unscathed. Winning has to matter, but all wins and all losses are not created equal. And frankly, some losses are actually more impressive than other wins.
The only thing I would say to combat that is that I feel like if you are daring to be great, if you are going out there to play some of the best teams and you keep playing teams and you're getting your butt whooped, that shows you necessarily don't belong. Like a lot of people were saying, or some people were saying Clemson don't belong because they lost to, SEC schools. And it's just like, I mean, those are valid points.
Well, I mean, if you schedule tough and you get waxed, I'm not saying that just for scheduling, like, sweet, lock them into the playoffs in September.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you play a team tough, it's kind of like how we do our tier rankings. I mean, that's essentially what the committee's doing. They're doing tier rankings. Who's definitely in? Who are we considering? And if you show, like, we moved the Packers up even though they lost to the Lions because it showed they're on the same level. That's different than, oh, hey, cool, you beat Southeast West State by 50.
Yeah.
I'd value a 3-point loss to a great team over a 40-point win over a directional school that's up from D2 last year.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. Other people will be like, wins. Wins.
I'm excited for it, though. I think the 12-team thing it's going to be cool. It's going to be interesting.
Definitely
and we get more football.
Yeah, which, take that. More also more games between good teams, which means, like, for me, college football is just all about the scouting. Like, I don't spend a lot of time watching college football, but I then wind up watching a lot of these games in pieces and chunks back in the spring as I do the draft stuff. And so the more quality opponents I have to watch guys against, like, that is definitely something good. All right, this, that, the other thing tonight, NBA Cup. We got Orlando, Milwaukee, Dallas, Oklahoma City. Winners go to Vegas. Yeah, that's where we're at in this thing.
Yes, sir. It came fast, man. It moved.
It did. It really did. So these games are the quarterfinals. They're played in the home arenas. So Magic at Milwaukee, who started this season absolutely terribly and has really come on. So credit to Doc and them for figuring it out. I was like, man, is Doc going to get fired or is Doc just going to walk away? They're a poop show. But they've come on strong. Giannis averaging 32 and 11 on the season. And then Mavs Thunder, that's a banger. Luka and Shea both having the same seasons they usually have, 28-8-8, 29-5-6 for Doncic and Gilgeous-Alexander, respectively. That game's in Oklahoma City. Any particular thing that you're watching for in either of these games, Ant?
I will be watching for a lot of the one-on-one action between Shea and Luka and Kyrie. The Mavs actually had a one-on-one tournament at their facility, and Kyrie won.
Not surprised.
But I'm excited to see those guys go at it against Shea. I truly don't believe there's one person that can guard him just because he's a big guard. He has moves. He's quick. He can finish through contact. And then you got Luka, who's slow and, very methodical.
He's methodical.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. Now, if you want to get in a track meet, now we can call him slow.
Okay.
But on a basketball court, he's not slow.
Yeah, he's
methodical.
He is smooth.
I'm actually more interested in the other game. I want to see what this young Magic team has. Like,
they're banged up though, man. You got Paolo that's hurt. You got Franz Wagner that's hurt.
That's right. Franz just did go down.
Yeah, so
that takes a bite out of it.
If they weren't hurt, I definitely would be more interested, in that game. I still think it's probably going to be a good game. They're a very good defensive unit, but you still need to be able to score and keep up with the Bucks, who are on a bit of a heater. So, I'll be looking at the second game mainly, but I might catch a tail end of the first.
I forgot Wagner got hurt on Friday. And Paolo's, let's see, when did he get hurt? That was in October, out 4 to 6 weeks. So he should be getting back soon, but unlikely for tonight. Not going to happen tonight. So the Magic are a fun team who's, we talked about this with Josh Robbins a couple weeks ago. Like, this is a team that, like, they've rebuilt it right. And part of that was they got Paolo. Like, they got the guy right. And we'll see just how good they're going to be. See a little bit about their competitive spirit tonight against a championship-tested, in a lot of respects, Milwaukee Bucks team. Then you got the rumor mill starting. The reason why is because on Sunday, December 15th, you have a ton of players that become trade eligible. If you sign a contract in July of, say, 2024, you are not eligible to be traded till at least December 15th. So with that deadline passing, a lot of trades open up. Now, most won't happen for another couple of weeks, but you have all kinds of names and rumors starting, including Jimmy Butler in Miami. I read that earlier today and was like, wait a second, what's going on? But Miami's ready to potentially go in a different direction, a little bit of a youth movement, and Jimmy's obviously got plenty to give. Now, the Heat are still 5th in the standings, so it's not like they're a bad team. And they've won 6 of their last 10, so they're kind of trending in the right direction. But I think they know, hey, as currently constructed, we're probably not a championship team. We'd rather get younger around Bam. Let's see what kind of return we can get for a guy who can help a true championship contender right now. And if I'm Jimmy, thanks, Miami. I'll be forever part of the Heat family. But if I can go somewhere where I can win a ring right now and help you guys long term, it's kind of a win-win. And then he'll retire in a couple of years and go back and live in Miami and be very happy.
I think on the Jimmy Butler front, I really wanted it to work out down in Miami. And I think he gave that city everything.
Like, they made a couple of finals. Like,
they went
it's
to the
insane
finals,
how good they were.
But I really wanted him to be able to bring one to the city. He's one of my favorite players. I don't know if you know this. He's one of my favorite players. Paul George is one of my favorite players too. LeBron James and Rajon Rondo when he was in the league. Those 4 right there, they were my Mount Rushmore. It's a weird 4, but
it is a weird 4. I think we need to unpack that at some point. I have questions.
Oh man. Well,
Rajon Rondo is one of my least favorite players of the last 2 decades in the NBA. That's personal, though, because I was in Dallas when he got traded there. And
I just modeled my game after Rajon Rondo.
So you can't shoot?
Huh?
So you can't shoot?
No. If you ask my friends if I can shoot, they'll say no. But what they will tell you is when it comes to competition shooting, like three-point shooting and things of that nature, I can do that, Craig. I can do that exceptionally well. But when it came to, like, catching and shooting in a game, I don't know if that's, my strong suit.
So you played harder in big games and then told everyone that that's not what you did? Like your national TV games, you just play better?
Yeah.
I don't need to dig up my old Rajon Rondo. Barbs. That's not a good waste. That's not a good use of our time at
I was just a
6:45
point
on
guard, man.
Tuesday
Pass
in
first.
Washington D.C. You can be pick a better pass first point guard.
I'm not picking Chris Paul. I'm a Chris Paul hater. I am.
Why are you a Chris Paul hater?
I just don't like the guy, Craig. I don't.
You
think
in like 3/4 of the NBA. I
don't like that guy. I don't like that guy. I think he plays. He can play dirty a little sometimes as well.
He's over feisty sometimes. I think that's fair.
And that's probably why I don't like him then.
Yeah, sometimes I don't like people, but I acknowledge that they're great. And sometimes
I respect his game.
Okay,
I wouldn't say
By the way, congrats.
Don't get me started, Craig. Don't get me started. I went on a 2-minute Chris Paul rant before.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll save that for another day. We got breaking Nats news. Tell it to you now as we take a look at what's trending on the Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Again, free Odyssey app has a brand new feature. And actually has something really exciting coming tomorrow for those of you that listen on a regular basis. New feature that's for everyone. If you download the Odyssey app right now, you can do this. When you're listening live, you can hit the voicemail button on the screen, and you can literally leave us a voicemail. You can be like, hey, Craig, I want to know about XYZ, or I think this of your opinion, or blah, 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 blah. That'd be weird if you just left a voicemail that said blah, 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 blah. But you could. You could. It's right there for you. Check out the brand new feature on the Odyssey app today. It's available for all of our shows, so you can let all of us know what you think, even when we are not taking calls. The other thing that is coming out tomorrow, Ant, is the annual Wrapped feature. So I think we're calling it the Year in Review. Sorry, Spotify. Or the Odyssey Year in Review. You've seen the Spotify Wraps or Apple Music Year in Review. Every app is doing this now. And so we want to let you know, hey, you're one of our top listeners for the Hoffman Show, or one of our top listeners for Take Command, or the Team 980. You spent X amount of time listening to us. You are the best of the best. And I'm talking to you. Yeah, you. Right now. Yep.
Oh, somebody's calling right now, Craig.
Oh, who is it?
I think you.
Oh, that didn't really work with the joke, Anthony.
Okay, no way.
Because every single person listening right now, the you is them.
Them, yeah.
Not someone calling in. See, I was trying to be inclusive, and you're like, someone's calling in, and I'm like, that just nobody's calling. So literally every listener, you just swerve the other way.
I apologize.
You should, but you did, and that's big of you. So thank you. The point is, tomorrow when you open the Odyssey app, or actually I think it comes in your email. So you get an email from us tomorrow with your Odyssey Year in Review. And all I ask is that if either Take Command or this show is on your Year in Review, share that thing on social media. It'd be great to hear from you and let us show you a little love in return. So tag me at Hoffman.sports on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on, if somehow you're sharing on like a YouTube reel or whatever. I don't know. However you want to share it, or whatever social media you use, pop that sucker up there and let's do it. All right. Anything else housekeeping-wise, Anthony, for tomorrow's show and beyond?
GQ speaks tomorrow.
Yes.
Jaden
speaks tomorrow.
Oh, we got to revisit our 10 players.
Oh, yeah. So tomorrow we're also going to revisit a segment we did in the preseason. We did a countdown of the 10 most important commanders. So we're going to grade out that list. How did we do? I actually think we did pretty well. So we'll grade that out coming up tomorrow. And also, it's Competition Wednesday. I got to make sure I got my glasses, Anthony. I don't know where I put them. So I gotta find those. They can't be very far away.
Oh, yeah. And look, also, I have a hat for you, Craig, too. If you
you have an extra hat?
Yes, if you want to twin with me. Yes.
Obviously.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah, because I'll have my hat. I might even come in here with a nice little vest.
Oh.
This little cardigan. Hey, look, I might spruce it up. I might really come in here with the khakis, the brown shoes.
Are you going to go full Urkel?
Not full Urkel. I won't have the suspenders on.
Okay.
But
I guess that really would be full Urkel.
Yeah. I might spruce it up. I'm going to see what I have in my closet. I really love this, Craig. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
You like for these
this
moments.
should not have been on the wheel of punishment, because it is not punishment for you. BetMGM tonight coming up in just a minute. Anthony, do we have time for real things?
Yes, we do.
Hit the button.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, we got Coach T. Is that what we got in real things today?
Yes, we do. And we have the Brett Favre one. We got to pick one, though.
I'm going to go with Mike T, because the Brett Favre one's awkward. Mike Tomlin, his Steelers are playing the Eagles this weekend, so this is how he started his press conference today.
Man, really excited about this one, man. This Pennsylvania State Championship. Excited about representing Whippeal in this. I was just joking this morning, man. We could play this game in Breezewood, man. That'd be awesome.
Just Mike Tomlin going full. Let me just pander. It's like a comedian going on tour, and they have the same set, but depending on what city they're in, they'll do like quick couple jokes that are local.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like. I don't know the Whippeal reference.
I don't know either. Maybe it's the conference up there, the high school conference.
Oh, okay. The other reference is a city that's like dead between Philly and Pittsburgh. He's like, let's just play it there. That'd be a bad idea.
Yeah.
That's our show. We'll see you tomorrow on the Hoffman Show. BetMGM tonight is next.